this one. Um, I'm going to continue where we're doing basically it's introduction to Judaism that everybody's welcome to introduce themselves through. So I'm using that file, that article that I wrote, which is just a draft, the Torah V'Ava Principles of Faith, and it's a concept that I mentioned in other discussion. This is faith by practice, that we other than adhering just to an ideology, theoretical ideology, and a set of beliefs and dogma. There's a belief that stems from the very practice, like just seeing how the Torah works so well with the human condition, and that in itself is a proof of its veracity and why it is beneficial to follow it. So I was talking about the principles of Maslow's and positive psychology. I think we got to the third or fourth one, to the third one. So now I'll speak about the last two. So just to recap, I wrote here: the Torah structure of observance is aligned with the ideas of Abraham Maslow. We are commanded to make sure that our fellow humans have, just like us, the following essential needs: food, shelter, and clothes. That's in the Torah system of social justice and always caring for others. Safety and trust, and that stems from the understanding that God is omnipresent and omniscient. So we respond to Him, we report to Him, and this way there's always someone who oversees this whole operation, and it makes sure that people don't betray the trust of others. Then we have friendship and community, which is evident both in the golden rule, love others as you love yourself, and in the Ten Commandments, where it says, honor your father and mother. In general, there's a very strong emphasis in Judaism about society. Judaism does not encourage asceticism, does not encourage people to break away from the community and live separately. For example, if you think of the one example I give, the Nazirite law, a person who decided to take upon himself a vow to become a Nazir, which literally means a hermit. So that person decides not to drink wine, not to shave his hair, and not to become impure by being in the presence of a dead person, right? But to not be in the presence of a dead person is not something that one can predict, right? Especially back in the day, um, people's health was less predictable than it is now, and it was very common that someone would be next to another person, that person dies suddenly. So how does that Nazir, the person who takes the vow, how does it make sure he makes sure that his vow is not broken? Because sometimes he would take the vow to be, let's say, a Nazir for a whole year, right? And he kept his vow for 364 days, and on the 365th day, someone died next to him, and he became impure, and now he has to start the year all over again, right? Not a good thing. So what is he going to do? How can he make sure that that this is not going to happen? Only by separating himself from the rest of the people. So this is mentioned in the Torah, sort of an isolated case. This is not the ideal. If one wants to do that, he could do it, but that's not the way of Torah. The way of Torah to celebrate life and to practice Judaism is by living with a family, living with community, etc. So the Torah is very keen on that issue of we need to have friendship and community. So now we get to number 4, which is self-respect and dignity. That is something which is important, not always practiced, even among observant people with good intentions. Unfortunately, because parents think this is what I want my child to be, and they try to direct them to be that. And if the child does not deliver, they can be very critical, and that chips away at the child's self-respect and dignity. And again, I'm going to the golden rule. It's amazing how those simple words, 3 simple words in the Torah, really contain so much. Love others as you love yourself. When we start with loving yourself, meaning that you have to find in you your purpose and dignity and self-respect. So that's something that's essential to the value system of the Torah. Also, throughout the Tanakh, you'll find references to the importance of not shaming other people, not disrespecting them. There's a sensitivity to people with disabilities. Um, so and when we think of the leaders in the Torah, people like Moshe, like Gideon, Yirmiyahu, those are people who are being encouraged to become leaders, even though they think that maybe they're not deserving. So, a very strong emphasis in the Torah on those issues. Um, yeah, and so the concept of not embarrassing people publicly, a story that something that we could learn from the Genesis 38, the story of Tamar and Yehuda. But Tamar has the opportunity to embarrass Yehuda publicly and doesn't do that. Also in the books of Proverbs and Ecclesiastes and what is called the wisdom literature, there's extensive discussion on that. So that's very important. And finally, a purpose in life. Now, the purpose in life, the Torah doesn't tell us what is the purpose in life. We studied the book of Kohelet together, and we saw how the author takes us on a journey of asking, what is it that you want in life? But one thing is clear in the Torah, that there is a direction, that you have to find a path, that there is a journey. Like the whole idea of life streaming in a journey towards a certain direction is a Jewish idea, is not Jewish like an Israelite idea. It first appears in the Torah. Other religions, other mythologies always thought of the world as cyclical. You're born, you're dead. Nothing that you do can really change the world. And the Torah constantly speaks about how we can make the world a better place. That in itself is our purpose. So I don't want to spoil for anyone, but if you haven't seen yet, Disney came out with a new movie called Soul. It's supposed to be a children's movie. I don't know actually what it's rated, but there are really very deep philosophical issues there. Even things, issues that touch on mysticism and on the um, definition of a soul. Where do souls? Where are they before and after before they come to the world, after they leave the world? It's a beautiful, beautiful movie, and especially in regards to those last points, the self-respect and purpose. So I recommend watching that. If you have access to Disney Plus or Disney, I don't know how you. It's good to watch that. So that is that segment of positive psychology. I don't see the need of putting the labels on philosophies of the Torah, but that's why I said they are aligned. There's a very interesting parallelism between them that shows us that the Torah really is tailored for the needs of humanity. It works very well. Any questions on that? On those elements? Okay. So Shabbat. The next thing is Shabbat, and then also I'm writing those things for us to see that there's a very limited scope of mitzvot that are purely between us and God. The majority of the mitzvot are between us and other human beings, or they are for our benefit. So I wrote that the Shabbat is a gift to humanity, and it's actually referred to as such in the Torah, in Shemot 16, in Exodus 16, when the Israelites are surprised. They see the manna coming from heaven. They don't know what it is, and they don't know should they go outside and gather it on Shabbat or not. Moshe tells Bnei Israel, "Re'u ki Adonai natan lachem et Shabbat." Hashem gave you the Shabbat. It's an amazing gift. It allows us to take a break from the crazy race of everyday life. It's about distinguishing one day from the rest of the week by restraining from commercial activities, taking time to nurture one's soul and having quality time with family and friends. So when we think about that, and I'm sure that you have the Shabbat experience, everybody has their own Shabbat experience. This is something I think that today we take for granted, right? In modern society, we take for granted that there is a rest day, 1 day a week or 2 days a week. In some countries, it's 3 days a week. So obviously, you have a rest day, but that idea was not so obvious 3,000 years ago, and even today, the the weekend or the relaxation that people have is not exactly the same. It's not the same as Shabbat. So I think for many people that was heightened and felt more powerfully during that, this past year with COVID and quarantine and all that. I heard it from a lot of people saying, such as, I don't have the only day on my week now is blur day. Everything blurred into one continuity, all right? Or someone said, I have 3 days. I have yesterday, today, and tomorrow. That's what I have. And for observant Jews, when Shabbat comes, Shabbat becomes the axis around which the week revolves. So we do what we do during the week. We look forward to Shabbat. After Shabbat, we reminisce on what was on Shabbat. Shabbat is the opportunity for people to put, especially in the, what is it? When did the iPhone pop out? Like 15 years ago? It's hard to feel like it was here forever. I think it's about 15, right? 2005 when the first one rolled out.
Yeah.
Right? So before that, we had phones, but we were able to put them away for a while. Now it's so difficult. You talk to people, and as you talk to them, they're like, oh, back to their phone. Even close relatives. It's crazy. And if you mention this, what do you want from me? Like, just you never let me look at my phone. we have situations like that. So for on Shabbat, all of a sudden comes and you turn off the phone and you put it away for 25 hours. Uh, all of a sudden you have time to sit and do a puzzle, sing together, talk, listen to each other. It's a tremendous gift. Um, you know that there are retreats where people could go to a hotel where there's no internet connection. Like even if you try to cheat, there's no way you could get connection. You walk on the roof, go on the roof, try. There's nothing, and it's pretty expensive, like $2,000 a night to spend time. So it's just much easier to do Shabbat at your home. You could get this experience. Alex, you want.
Um, I guess I had a question about Shabbat. Is it? Would you say it's more a day to connect to God, or more a day to connect to family and friends, or maybe just both equally?
When we say connect to God, what does it mean?
Yeah, I guess that's a personal question. I mean, it could
No,
mean
that,
like
that, that no, I'll put it differently. When you connect to God, who's the beneficiary?
you,
God or you?
yeah, like me, right?
Right. So if you become a more godly person, then it benefits you and it benefits people around you. So of course, the question is how do what is your definition of God and how do you cleave to God? For some people is spend more time in the synagogue and read and pray and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And to others, it's you know seeing the gift that God gave you. So I'll give you like my own personal experience. My grandfather, of blessed memory, was a great scholar. He was really a very knowledgeable, not only in Jewish literature, philosophy, poetry, history, um, and I loved going to his house on Shabbat and sitting with him on the Shabbat table. There was never on his table, never, as far as I remember, the official moment that you find in so many Orthodox households where they say, "Okay, let us say a word of Torah." We never like a Dvar Torah. You know how they do that? Yeah. Uh, and he never said that because everything that we had around the table we either had discussions on, of Torah, of Judaism, of history. We were singing. It didn't matter. That was part of the Shabbat environment, right? But one of the things that my grandfather loved doing on Shabbat was a talent show. Talent show. He would ask the grandchildren, maybe that's where I took the idea of the musical Shabbat, Kabbalat Shabbat. It's like it's our own talent show. Every participant comes and sings and plays music. He said he wants all the grandchildren to present something. I mean, if they want, no pressure. You have a song, you have you have a skit, you want to do impressions, doesn't matter, just have fun. And it was so beautiful because that when I tell people that this was Shabbat, they're shocked, in an Orthodox, this is an observant household, right? And my grandfather is a scholar, and he says, I want the children to come here and act out skits and songs and all that. His wisdom was that when he asked us to do that, right, we felt so excited that the adults are listening to us, right? They're paying attention to what we do. And when that was happening, that Shabbat now becomes such a precious moment. So now I'll give you the flip side of that. There was a certain case that was brought to a child psychologist or an educator in Yerushalayim, in the Orthodox community. It was the case of a young kid, maybe 7-8 years old, who he studied in Talmud Torah, like Orthodox school, right? And his rabbi was very upset with him. He said, I don't know, I think he's rude, he's disrespectful, and he brought it to the father's attention. The father himself was a rabbi, so now he asked the child's rabbi, what did Yossi do? His name was, I don't know if his name was Yossi. They always stick Yossi to them. So he says, what did Yossi do? He says, I asked him, what is the most important thing around the Shabbat table? And he said the cholent, the hamim, the Shabbat food, the cholent. I said, and I asked again, Yossi, what is important? Learning Torah, saying Dvar Torah, or eating cholent? And he says, eating cholent is more important. So he's very disrespectful and this and that. So he sent him so the father went with the child to this educator psychologist and said, well, what are we going to do with this Yossi? He's a very mundane kid, he cares more about food than he cares about Torah. We don't get it. So that educator, Rabbi, I think it was Rabbi Jacobson, said with the father, I says, okay, I want to tell me what happens on your Shabbat table. Tell me, how does it go? He says, well, Yossi cannot have his portion of the food, of the cholent, until he says the Dvar Torah, right? Until he delivers that Torah thought that he learned in school. The rabbi said, okay, and when Yossi starts speaking, what do you do? The father said, once he starts speaking, I start eating my food. So he said, so see what is happening here. Your son gets the message that in order to get food, he has to pay with Torah. So now the food is the goal, and the Torah is the vehicle to get the food. So of course the food is more important, right? Not only that, when he starts talking, you start eating. So he knows that he just has to mark a check on what he said or not. So going back to the idea of Shabbat, says connecting to God is not just learning Torah. It's really that, and that's why it's connected to the previous paragraph, right? It's connecting to the gifts around you, family, purpose in life. Whatever you discuss becomes part of the Shabbat of the Shabbat table, as long as you don't discuss things that distress you, like business or politics. If you are of not everybody's on the same party, yeah, those are things that maybe you will want to put aside. But science, philosophy, poetry, listening to the kids, listening to this is all part of it. Shabbat is when, so going back to your question, connecting to God is really connecting to yourself. And everything we do is like we have to look at it as moving on those tracks of, what happens between us and God, what happens between us and other human beings and us in the world. But really, when we say us and God, it's really a retrospect and looking into our own soul, our own neshama, and finding in ourselves our talents, our possibilities. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. Uh, any other question about Shabbat? I mean, this is very general about Shabbat. I wrote that we restrain from commercial activities. This is a very, very general statement, because we know we are studying Hilchot Shabbat separately. I have a whole podcast series on that. Um, the laws of Shabbat is something that got out of hand because of fear. People are afraid to transgress Shabbat, so they keep writing more and more and more details on what you're allowed to do, what you're not allowed to do. Really, the core is you don't do commercial activities and you don't do things that you usually do during the week. So no cooking, you don't start fire, we don't do agricultural activities, artisanal activities. Um, but when you sit at your table and you make your food, your already cooked food. Just example, putting salt here or lemon juice there. I mean, those are not the places where you might transgress Shabbat. But as I said, when you're going through those laws, they sometimes just got out of control. That's the important thing to know is that it's quite easy to keep Shabbat as long as you refrain from lighting fire on Shabbat and cooking on Shabbat. They're pretty much you're safe. Shabbat should not be a complicated thing to follow. Yep. Okay. Um, so let's go to the next issue. Again, we're talking about very general principles. Kashrut. I wrote here the laws of kosher food are quite simple and they are geared towards our benefit. They teach us self-awareness, the ability to delay gratification, and sustainability. So let's start from the end. Sustainability is not something that you hear a lot in Orthodox circles, right? It almost feels as they are poles apart. That if you care about sustainability, you're not Orthodox, and it's a shame. Part of it is it has to do also with the next paragraph about ecology. So maybe I'll go there and come back to kashrut. The first commandment given to mankind was protecting the world. The Torah says in the second chapter of Genesis, God created man and placed him in the Garden of Eden to protect and preserve it. To cultivate and preserve it. And so we've always cultivated the land, but in terms of protecting the land, I think that it was not until the 20th century that we realized that it's really within our power to destroy the land. And unfortunately, we're really pretty much down that path, almost in a way of no return, and it's scary. But when we look at things like the laws of the 7-year cycle and meat consumption, they promote sustainable agriculture, and responsibility in general is an essential element of Jewish law. So we'll talk about the 7-year cycle, right? 7-year cycle is something that for ancient people might have looked not just revolutionary, it's crazy, totally crazy. You tell people not to cultivate the land for a whole year. You don't plant, you don't plow, you could just do some maintenance work, but basically you don't touch the ground. It didn't make sense. The Romans had a system of rotating crops in one field, but they constantly used the whole field just for different crops, and they knew that it helped replenish some trace minerals. But it's only in recent generations that it was found that the 7-year system of the Torah, where you work the land for 6 years and fallow it for the 7th year, actually uh, helps the soil regain the minerals that it needs without fertilization, definitely without the chemicals that we pump into the land, right? Uh, Eduardo, you agree with that? This is your expertise.
Yeah, it's interesting, Rabbi, because I'm read your book, and usually you adopt the term flow, the flow of the life, the flow
Yeah.
of the halacha, and flow for me it's very close with the water. In water ecosystems, the biogeochemical process are much more fast. And for example, in fish farming, it's impossible do two cycles one after other because the system does not
Support,
support
support it. Yeah.
that. It's impossible.
Hmm.
It's technically impossible. So if you wanna gain money with this activity, you need to stop. So the productivity, the capitalism for water ecosystem depends of Shabbat or depends of the break. So because the nature is flow, but it's also break. So I'm absolutely allow your premise.
Yeah. Interesting. Thank you. Yeah. So it's interesting because when we think of ourselves, we know that we need to rest. Like if we lived in continuous flow all the time, we would collapse. Uh, there's a lot of interest and study invested in even understanding why we sleep the way we sleep because according to evolutionary biologists, our sleep is a bit, it seems a bit wasteful, that we need eight or 6, 8, 10 hours, depends on who we are, a day. We could use it, to fight for our survival. uh, but that break is built into nature. But uh, when uh, we are allowed to become masters of our, you could say, our destiny, and decide how we do things, we tend to overwork ourselves. We use artificial light that keeps us awake late at night, and the Torah tells us, really, with that idea of Shabbat and of the 7 year cycle, to make sure that things are paced out in a normal way, in a balanced way. But it helps the environment for sure, because we don't need to we don't drain the resources of the land. But also during that year that the land was fallowed, people would look for other ways to support themselves, so they became resourceful. That, I think, I commented somewhere else. I think it's a side effect of that idea of the seventh day and the seventh year, because we got so used, we fall into a certain rhythm, and that we think that's the only way to do things. And Shabbat comes and breaks that cycle and say, okay, you look at things differently. You know, um, ideas all of a sudden come in, and plans. It's okay for that to happen. And the same for a whole year. Imagine a farmer in ancient Israel is being told, okay, this year you're not going to work the land. And to work the land back in the day was to be a slave of the land. Anyone, if you ever visited a farming community, which I know mostly from Israel, but also from Colombia, it's incessant work. It's not. Um, there's a Disney movie. I watched the trailer. I'm not. I don't know if it's Disney, and I'm not promoting them today, but it so happens it came last year. I just saw the trailer. I didn't have a chance to watch the movie. It's called The Biggest Little Farm. It's about a family who decided to open a farm, to start a farm in California, and it shows like all the adversities they go through, with animals, with the bugs. It's crazy, crazy stuff. So anyway, the Torah tells you, okay, take a break. And the laws of kashrut, as I mentioned, they care about the environment, about sustainability, we eat only certain animals. We don't hunt. People didn't eat much meat at the time of the Bible. They only ate what they needed. But I wanted two other things here. That the laws of kashrut teach us self-awareness, and they teach us to delay gratification. So those are, I don't think they're even side benefits. I think those are direct benefits of the kashrut system. The kashrut system makes people stop and think, can I eat it or not? So, and that means that actually it's not good to go to a kosher supermarket, because when you go to a kosher supermarket, you don't think, you just grab whatever's on the shelves, it's kosher. It's better to go to a place where there's I go to Trader Joe. I mean, I go to the kosher supermarket because that's where I get kosher meat. But the rest of the stuff I buy at stores where I could look at labels, I could look at the ingredients and ask myself, is it kosher or not? And that is an important process. We stop and think what we're eating. So before there were people were health aware, or they're looking for to see if it's GMO or other things. Kosher consuming people always look for to know where did this come from. Now the other thing is about delaying gratification, extremely important, because that is a concept that has only been discovered in the 20th century. I think the experimentation started in the 1950s or 1960s. I'm actually reading now the book about that called the marshmallow test. Now everybody was well aware of the marshmallow test, where kids are being given a candy and they're told, you can have the candy now, or if you wait until I come back, you'll get another candy. And they tried it with them, a million versions of having a picture of the cake, being told to think of a real cake. It's very, very intriguing. But so the first important conclusion that emerged from that study was that kids who are able to delay gratification, meaning they know that they can eat the candy now. That's it. They don't have to wait, but they're willing to wait in order to get a greater benefit. Those kids usually do much better in school and in life. They do better in school. They get better grades. They have a greater chance of not dropping out, graduating high school, getting a good job, having a steady relationship, getting a better salary. So this is really a predictable element in one's life. If you can delay gratification, you're going to have a better life. It's amazing. The other amazing thing is that it's an acquired habit. You could teach it to children. Yeah, there's some people are more prone to it than others, but if you work on it, you could help children acquire that approach, that character trait. The thing is that I think one of the areas where it's most difficult for parents to deal with children's demands is with food. I want this candy, I want the other thing, right? And when you speak about kosher and a kid wants, this is what I want, and you say it's not kosher, you can't have it, right? It teaches us to delay gratification. Okay, I'm not going to eat that, even though I want it, and I'll eat something else later. And that ability, I think, contribute a lot to the success of the Jewish people over the generations in achieving great things, including the establishment of the state of Israel. Like maybe the greatest example of delayed gratification. This is a nation that lost its country, lost the temple, lost everything, and was still willing to wait 2,000 years to the point where they did it again. So I'm going to conclude with this today. I'm going to stop the recording. I'll stay on for if people have some questions. A second.